Okay, hearing none, I would just like to make sure that all of the applicants whose applications are in the not recommended for funding category, that, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Sembrano, the next application date for these TRAN awards is December 7th. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so to all of you, I would recommend that, as always, you take a look at the GWG comments, and should you decide to reapply, factor those in to your resubmissions and apply by December 7th. And Gil, the date for the hearing of the next GWG on these applications is more or less what date at this point?
For the next cycle, the review would be scheduled in March and the board consideration in April.
Okay. So everybody listening, you have the dates and please proceed accordingly. Okay. The second part of this four-part process is, as I said, are there any projects recommended for funding that you want to move out of the recommended for funding category? Okay, hearing none. Third prong, do I hear a motion to close out the not recommended for funding category? I'll make that.
So move. This is Al Bolette.
Okay.
For our second JT's motion.
Okay. Thank you, Al. Is there any discussion by members of the board?
Yes, JT.
Yes, Isabel.
Thank you. Not being the scientist in the room, I wanted to ask perhaps a few others to make comments. In reading things like 1298920, 12883, and a couple of those above it, I think of them as seeming to be very exciting new therapy or advanced therapy or new science that is exciting, or is this just some continuation of work that has been done? For instance, on the I think that's a 967, the B-cell acute lymphoblastic leukemia. I think myself, for interpretation and for the impact on underserved communities, I know, for instance, that new research is showing Latino kids at higher risk. There's a marker they have for leukemia, puts them at higher risk, both in incidence, in lack of response to treatment, as well as mortality. So this kind of excites me at the idea that there is this kind of a therapy becoming available or being tested at least, or piloted. So I'm asking some of my colleagues here to tell me if they think that there is some, if amongst these, there are some really exciting new steps forward for that will eventually help various patients who are in need of this kind of work, care, treatment, therapy.
Gil, do you want to answer that question?
I'm happy to say that. I think from CIRM's perspective, we're excited about these projects, and so yeah, many of them do represent projects that either we have funded previously and are continuing in their endeavor to develop new therapies, such as the one that you cited on the for the B-cell ALL. And so yes, I think many of them do. Some of them are also for some rare diseases that, although they may have limited number of patients that they might act on initially, they do also represent a generalized approach, or an approach that can be generalized to other similar diseases. So I think from CIRM's perspective, we're pleased and happy to go forward with these.
Great. Thank you. Larry, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I wonder if I may make some remarks about whether and how often we should be overriding the expert reviewers, which I think partly addresses Isabel's comments. Is that okay with you, JT?
Certainly.
Yeah. So I think one of the issues is, well, let me start this way. All of these projects have really important goals. All of them use interesting methodology, some very novel. But what we get back from the reviewers is not just the level of excitement. We actually get back comments on how feasible is the project relative to the plan that was presented. Because you can have great goals, but if you don't have a good map for getting there, it's not going to be successful. The other issues are we don't have the grants in front of us, so we really can't judge how important are the considerations the reviewers raised, but I think we have to trust the reviewers on that. And I'd say that most of us on this board don't have the domain-specific expertise to judge how important those flaws are and are they adequately rebutted, say, in a rebuttal letter. The only other comment I want to make is we sometimes make it sound as though if we don't fund a grant now, it'll never be funded. And the fact is, my long experience with granting agencies was, you sometimes get a rejection, you improve the project, you send it in for review, and it often gets funded at that second chance. And if you look at the grants that are in green in this round, fully half of those grants, 5 out of 10, are resubmissions. So those are grants that didn't let the reviews stop them forever. They came up with a good set of addressing of the reviews. They were expertly reviewed by the GWG. And in fact, they made it into the final funding batch. So when we say no, it's only a delay of a few months potentially. And I think that's worth it to get project plans that really are judged feasible and likely to succeed on an important goal. So thank you.
So I think, Larry, those are all very important observations. And I would just add that it's a part of the beauty of the CIRM process that's in place is it allows for precisely what Larry is saying, which is the improvement of submissions factoring in the expert comments we get from the GWG. And for those of you never sat through one of the GWG meetings,
it's already been done, right?
The attention to all detail is meticulous and tremendous expertise is always brought to bear. So it is the board is getting the benefit of the best advice of extremely qualified people who spend a great deal of time and energy in evaluating everything that comes before us and is recommended for funding or not. But for those that aren't, we're all about trying to maximize the chance that a project is going to work. So to the extent that it can be improved, resubmitted, and evaluated, and gleaned to be something worthy of funding, that just makes the project stronger and the program that CIRM has stronger. So I totally echo every single thing Larry said. Those are all very important points.
JT?
Yes, Isabel.
Yeah. First of all, thanks to Larry for the primer. I will probably need it every 6 months or so. Just a continuation to remind me. Second of all, though, I would like to say that from my perspective, as a chair of the communication subcommittee, I want to understand these in a way that I can translate them to the public. I want to understand that I can go out and really convince them that the dollars that they're investing have this great hope and this great excitement about them. And so I'm looking for that too. I think it's well and good that we're helping support the science, but the public needs to understand why the science is good for them. And I don't think we at CIRM, as hard as we have tried, have embedded that excitement in this work and made the public feel good about what we're doing. So thank you for that. I'll remember that. And hopefully we can come up with some wonderful communications plans to really reflect some of this. I would go immediately back to the Latino community and say, we've got this high incidence of pediatric cancer, but there are some things on the horizon that might really make a difference to save your child. And so that's the kind of a relationship I want to have between this science and with the communities that we have to talk to. So thank you, Larry, I appreciate it. And thank you, JT, for the time.
And very valid points, Isabel. The communication aspect is critical, and we have a great story to tell. And by the way, are doing an excellent job on many fronts. If, for example, I would refer you to Kevin and Kevin's blog, and which comes out, which is extremely understandable, breaks down the projects, gets across the level of excitement. Now, obviously, the blog can't deal with every single project we've approved, but it's as a form of communication, it's extremely readable, and I think does succeed in both getting across the very excellent work that we are enabling, and also does convey the sufficient level of enthusiasm. But to your point, Isabel, we always can improve for sure, and need to, so that the public understands both what's available, and since taxpayers are funding this, they deserve to know what's going on. So all the above is true. So thank you very much for your comments. Okay, so let's see. So I think
Dave Martin had his hand raised. It's down now, but I wanted to make sure that he had an opportunity if he still had a question. Sorry to interrupt you.
Sure, Dave.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. I certainly agree with everything that Dr. Goldstein stated. But on the other hand, the title of this group is a scientific review, and being blinded as a member of this committee in terms of the subcommittee, in terms of who are the reviewers on the GWG and what is their very specific expertise, raises, in my mind, I've got about 3 pages of questions on these that mostly pertain to, very specific questions about what is the target? Is this a valid target? Does this group need to really go after Interact meeting before they file a pre-IND submission or for a meeting? And so I'm sort of torn, because when I look at these, I always, as a scientist, have questions that go beyond just, they're falling into a category above 84. And so it's a little complicated for us to, I think, navigate this as a scientific review committee.
Thank you, Dave. Other general comments further to these themes from members of the board? Okay, so I think we were, Maria, if I'm correct, we had a motion to close out the not approved for funding.
That's correct. We still need public comment.
Correct. Okay.
Before the vote.
Correct. So is there any discussion on that motion by members of the board? Or any comments from members of the public?
Raise hand.
Okay, Maria, I see a 415 hand. Is that we have one comment? Is that what you're seeing?
That's we have 2 now.
2 comments.
So why don't we just start?
Okay, well,
as a reminder, it's 3 minutes for public comment.
Correct. Okay, we're going to go with whomever is attached to 415-235-2753. Please state your name, affiliation, and again, you have 3 minutes.
This is Kevin McCormack, the Communications Director. I'm reading a letter from Don Reed in support of Dr. Tom Okarma. And so this is Don's letter. We all know Tom Okarma, a giant in the field of stem cell research. He has a record of success going back decades. After his pioneering work with Geron, Okama founded Asterios and continued the only regenerative therapy for spinal cord injury, as well as a stem cell-derived cancer immunotherapy in clinical development for lung cancer. We also all know someone, perhaps we ourselves, who suffers from a myocardial infarction, a heart attack. Even with the current standard of care, heart attacks all too often develop into chronic heart failure. This can not only be fatal, but is staggeringly expensive, a condition that will soon reach $70 billion a year in America alone. This disease and its accompanying costs disproportionately afflict underserved communities. The project being considered involves a biological drug that stimulates heart regeneration after a heart attack to restore the useful function of a damaged heart. That is a battle for life itself. A big plus for the proposal is the ease of its implementation. It does not require surgery, nor special equipment, nor physical training. It is administered through what they call a wearable injector. This will be an outpatient procedure, broadly available through Medicare and private insurance to the community of patients with heart attacks. The reviewers recognize the project as unique. CIRM has nothing else like it. Further, the comments of the critics were responded to in a serious fashion, showing a willingness to adapt when appropriate. Some reviewers are experts and were responded to accordingly. Finally, because of the seeming ease and affordability of its administration, this approach may advance health justice so that not only the super rich can afford to be made well. Your yes vote for Tran 1-12907 will allow the fulfillment of FDA pre-IND requirements and place treatment at the door of a first-in-humans clinical trial. It is exactly what CIRM is built for, to ease suffering and save lives affordably. In the words of the late Christopher Reeve, who, by the way, died of a heart attack, please allow this important effort to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Maria, do you want to just invite the next guests to speak here?
Sure. I believe it's Pilar's next. If you'd like to make your public comment, it's 3 minutes.
Yes, I'll speak. I'm Mark Mercola. I'm a director of RegenCore. That's Tran 12907. On behalf of RegenCore, I'd like to thank this committee and to enter into the record the merits of our proposal that were very eloquently stated just a moment ago. Heart failure, of course, is a ubiquitous and unmet medical need, the largest killer in the state, bigger than cancer. We proposed a new therapeutic derived from stem cell studies that promotes heart regeneration. The treatment will be simple and inexpensive, delivered on an outpatient basis, and hence readily available to underserved communities. Reviewers were extremely supportive, as Gil Sombrano laid out, placing us just 2 points beneath the funding pay line. The suggested modifications would facilitate FDA approval. We are in agreement with these perceptive comments, and we have incorporated them into our work plan and will work with CIRM to make that happen. CIRM support is critical to move this game-changing technology forward. I thank you very much for your consideration of our proposal.
Thank you. Maria?
Yeah. Matthew Porteous.
Hello, my name's Matthew Porteous, and I'm the PI on Tran 1-1291919, the gene correction for cystic fibrosis proposal. Thank you for allowing us to comment. I am the PI, and I led the development of the CIRM-sponsored first-in-human gene correction trial for sickle cell disease. This is a team that has previously been successful with prior CIRM disc funding and has published 2 papers in molecular therapy and cell stem cell. We are generally pleased with the overall assessment, and I am particularly proud that our team has discovered and identified that there are patients representing underserved populations in California with cystic fibrosis for which the current triple modulator therapy simply will not be effective. And thus our proposal takes on additional significance because our approach will target these patient populations. As this is a resubmission, and we took the advice to address the prior comments from the reviewers. Unfortunately, our team and the review team have a fundamental disagreement about the feasibility and necessity of certain types of experiments, which I have outlined in detail in the public letter. The 2 major areas of disagreement is the reviewers' desire, which we share, about demonstrating the functionality of our gene-corrected cells in an animal model, that is, human cells functioning in an immunodeficient mice. We note, though, that in the hematopoietic system, functionality of cells is not necessary for approval of an IND. Instead, simple engraftment is what is needed to be demonstrated. The second major flaw is that the proposed experiments, and again, we agree with the reviewers that we wish we could do them, are simply not technically feasible. That is, it would be impossible for us to perform the experiments and complete the milestone if we followed the reviewer's suggestions. In our letter, we propose a potential path forward, which is to use the proposed Interact meeting with the FDA to not only discuss the planned tumorigenicity and toxicology study for a genetically engineered cell product, but also as a forum to get feedback on the necessity of establishing functional secretory cells in the rodent model rather than just simple engraftment. Thank you again for allowing us to speak, and we are hopeful that this project can continue to be funded and supported by the CIRM program.
Thank you, Dr. Porteous.
Paul, I believe you're next. But you are on mute, so we can't hear you.
Oh, my apologies. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. And again, thank you, to the members of the ICOC just for providing this opportunity for me to talk about our grant 12889, optogenetics therapy for treating retinitis pigmentosa and other IRDs. We were very pleased that our application had unanimous votes in favor of the scientific rationale and the significance for our program. And we understand that the reviewers had some concerns about our timelines, which are fixable. So the fact that we had such a strong review for the scientific rationale, of course, is very important and very exciting to us. A long time, well, actually it's a short time, it's only about 6 months, but a long time in development of such an early stage program. Over the last 6 months, we've had achieved a very significant milestone of selecting our CDMO and also engaging additional gene therapy experts. And we were actually modifying our timelines in the time that we got the comments back from the reviewers. So we completely agree with all of the reviewers' comments that our timelines were too ambitious. And we did send in Crawford Brown, who's our CMC expert, and I believe that he's on the line as well today. We did send in our adjusted timelines, which are still within the 30-month period of the grant, but we agree much more realistic considering the work that has to be done. Just about a comment about resubmitting and the additional time. For these patients who are blind or nearly blind, a delay of 6 months or 9 months for funding can be, very, very significant. Also, given the environment with the gene therapy space today and the availability of vendors, pushing out timelines could cause more of a delay than simply the 6 months for re-review. So we really ask the ICOC to please consider funding our application. And I'll hand it over to Crawford Brown. I think that he has some more granular comments that will hopefully give the ICOC satisfaction that we have addressed all of the reviewers' concerns. Thank you again.
Thank you, Paul. My name is Crawford Brown, and I would like to update you with regard to RAISE 001 CMC plans. As Paul indicated, we now have a far more mature plan, and we have updated this in a letter submitted last week that shows the means by which we can deliver this important new medicine to the clinic and have revised our timings accordingly. Over the past 6 months, we have completed international diligence on the CDMO environment to be able to select a partner capable of taking this product forward in expedited fashion. We've also completed in-person due diligence visits. Through our discussions with the CDMOs in terms of the rapidly changing environment in the marketplace for biologic production, it's clear that we've had to shift our timelines by 9 months as reflected in the Gantt. And this is noted by the reviewers with regard to the GMP plasmid timeline, which we've updated to reflect the lead time, the manufacturing and release of the plasmid. Having previously held position as CEO of a CDMO and as SVP Biologics R&D in Allergan, accountable for over 100 million US in outsourcing, I'm well placed to confirm that the capacity crunch in this sector is extremely severe and is only made worse by capacity utilized for COVID-19 vaccine production. Therefore, the delay in the grant is not simply measured in days or weeks, because CDMOs are booking the production slots 6 to 12 months in advance. This will be a very significant impact in delaying this product going forward for patients. And therefore, it's really critical that we book our slot so that this asset can go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria, are there any other public comments?
Do not see any hands raised.
Okay, so thank you all that gave public comment. We appreciate, as always, you coming before us to speak. The motion we have at the moment is to close out the not for funded category. I will ask the board if, having heard public comment, is there any reason not to vote on this motion? And that would be if now a member of the board would like to move one of these projects back up to the funding round. We have
JT, that's
the motion on the table.
So we have a motion on the table, so we would have to change that motion.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I was trying to see it. So how would we do that, Maria?
JT, this is Kevin. You need to go forward and just take a vote on the motion that's pending.
Okay. And so
and if that motion is declined, then you can entertain a new motion to advance something from the unfunded to the funded category.
Okay, thank you.
The alternative would be someone could offer a friendly amendment to the motion that could be accepted by the person making the motion.
Correct.
I don't know that you'd want to vote to approve removing all these and then have another vote to put one back in. Those would contradict one another, it would seem.
Adriana.
Yes, thank you. After hearing everything, I really was conflicted with Tran 12907. I have a lot of patients that have suffered heart attacks and the complications thereof, both physically and emotionally. And I think this is a different type of project that CIRM has on its portfolio. And I would like to support that we move it up. It had the minority report. The research team is very agreeable to work with the grants working group recommendations. And I'd like to try to move it up. I'm not sure how we're going to do it with the proposals on hand, but if it can happen, that would be great.
So Kevin, can you describe the friendly amendment process, which is, I believe, how you would address Adriana's comment?
So Adriana can propose an amendment that would have to then be accepted by you as the movant as an amendment to the motion that's on the floor. And then Al would agree as the second.
So then I would like to propose a friendly amendment to the motion to move Tran 12907 to the funded category.
Okay, I will accept that amendment. Al?
I will accept as the second.
Okay. Are there any other friendly amendments that anybody would like to offer?
We should vote on this first, and then if there are others that need to be moved in.
Sorry, Maria, feedback there.
Isn't that correct?
But
Hold on for 1 second.
I think you would call for any further discussion now that you have a motion and a second.
Correct.
Correct.
But the question is, do we vote on Kevin and Maria? Do we vote on this the friendly amendment first, or do we have any others that might be added and have an omnibus vote after that?
I think the preferred method at this stage, consistent with Fred's previous comment of once they're off, it's tough to bring them back on, is that if there's any other proposals to amend the current motion and amendment to bring anything else forward from the unfunded to funded, we include that and then just do it as one big motion with all tacked on amendments.
Okay. Are there other friendly amendments that anybody would like to author in connection with other currently unfunded projects? So I'm going to move that with respect to 12889. Generally speaking, when projects, or I should say more often or not, when projects are not recommended for funding, it starts with the science, which here is not something that's an issue. This is all about timeline and realistic achievement of goals, which I believe that has been addressed in the letters that have been submitted. Very difficult to tell if they've been adequately addressed, although it sounds like there is a very good faith effort to do so. And to the extent that we would approve something like this, would want to make it clear that the PI and team need to work closely with the CERM team to ensure that the process is one that has a realistic timeline that is doable. But I believe that given that the science is very solid here, I would move this up. So I would friendly amend myself, if it were, as it were. Al, how does that sound to you?
JT, I'm not as compelled on this particular application. And so while I, again, am impacted by the chair's passionate appeal, I am going to stay with the GWG recommendation.
Okay, totally fair enough. Okay, so we have, are there any other projects besides 907 that have a friendly amendment? Hearing none. Kevin, please describe for us exactly what we're voting on here.
So while the original motion was to not move anything from the unfunded to the funding category, the amendment was to change that and offer Tran 1 12907 and move that from the unfunded to the funded category.
Okay. You've now all heard the motion. Maria, will you please call the roll?
Dan Bernal.
Dan Bernal.
There's an echo.
There's an echo again. So is someone not muted? Thank you. Dan Bernal, Anne-Marie Dulege.
No.
Isabel Dudon.
Aye.
Fred Fisher.
Aye.
Leander Clark Harvey. David Higgins.
Yes.
Rich Lahara.
Yes.
Dave Martin.
No.
Lauren Miller Rogan. Adriana Padilla.
Yes.
Joe Panetta.
Yes.
Al Rolette.
Yes.
Jonathan Thomas.
Yes.
And I'm going to need a minute to do this, so please. The motion carries.
Okay, thank you. So now we have the last vote, which is, do we have a motion to approve all projects in green that are recommended for funding, which now include 907?
So moved, Mark Fisher Colby.
Thank you, Mark. Is there a second?
Mark, you cannot make the motion. Mark, you cannot make the motion on this. Sorry, it has to be someone without a conflict.
I'll make the motion. This is Joe Panetta.
Thank you, Joe.
I'll
Is there a
second the motion. I'll
Thank
second the
you,
motion.
Al. Is there discussion by members of the board? Hearing none, is there discussion by members of the public? Maria, do you see any?
There are no hands raised.
Hearing none, Maria, will you please call the roll?
As a reminder for those members with a conflict, if you could say either yes or no, except for those with which I have a conflict. Dan Bernal, Anne-Marie Dulage.
So no, and I don't think I have a conflict.
Isabel Duron.
Aye.
Mark Fisher Colbury.
Yes, except for those that I have a conflict.
Fred Fisher.
Yes.
Elena Flowers.
Yes, except those for which I have a conflict.
Leander Clark Harvey. David Higgins.
Yes.
Steve Julesgard.
Yes, except for those with which I have a conflict.
Rich Lahara.
Yes.
Dave Martin.
Yes.
Christine Miskowski.
Yes, except for those with which I have a conflict.
Lauren Miller Rogan. Adriana Padilla.
Yes.
Joe Panetta.
Yes.
Al Roulette.
Yes.
Jonathan Thomas.
Yes.
Art Torres.
Oh, finally. Aye, except for those of which I have a conflict.
Love hearing your voice, Art. Thank you. Carol Watson. The motion carries.
Thank you, Maria. On to action item number 4, consideration of applications submitted in response to clinical trial stage project program announcement CLINS 1, 2, or 3. Presentation from Dr. Sombrano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me put up my presentation. Hopefully everyone can see that. So these are the GWG recommendations for applications that were submitted to the CLIN program. And a reminder that the CLIN program has 3 different offerings for late stage preclinical projects, which is the CLIN 1, for clinical trials, which is CLIN 2, and for supplemental accelerating activities, which is a CLIN 3. So today's application is a CLIN 1 that we will be considering. Here is an update on the clinical budget. So we have an annual allocation of 162 million for the fiscal year 21-22. And so the amount requested today for the one proposal is 4.1 million. There are 49 million that have been approved in other awards. And so that if today's application is approved, that would leave us a balance of 108.9 million. So the review criteria, which very similar to what you've seen before, the basic 5 questions that determine merit of awards, the significance and potential for impact, rationale, the plan and design, feasibility, and the addressing the needs of underserved communities, all elements of what contributes to the scientific score. The scientific score in this case is a system of 1, 2, or 3. So those that receive a score of 1 have exceptional merit and warrant funding. The score of 2 means it needs improvement, and those applications typically go back to the applicant for revisions that are then considered again by the GWG. The score of 3 means it's sufficiently flawed that it doesn't warrant funding, and those cannot be resubmitted for at least 6 months. There are two elements that are related to diversity within the applications, and so just want to call them out and distinguish them. First is addressing the needs of underserved communities, which aligns with the scientific review criteria number 5. And so this section describes the applicant's plan for outreach and enrollment of a diverse patient cohort that would account for racial, ethnic, and gender diversity. And so this is part of the overall project and incorporated into the scientific merit score of a 1, 2, or 3. So it means that within that score, those elements from a scientific perspective have been incorporated. There is also, however, the diversity, equity, and inclusion section, which describes how the applicant team incorporates diverse perspective and experience to improve the project overall. And this could also address the overall commitment of the team, what the team's track record is in promoting diversity, as well as overlapping with the elements of the plans for enrollment and outreach. And so that section is evaluated and scored by our patient advocate and nurse members of the board. And that is shown in the DEI score, which is on a scale of 0 to 10. All right, so with that as background, this particular application, CLIN 1-12865, is a CAR T-cell therapy for B-cell malignancies. And so most specifically, the indication is for various types of leukemias and lymphomas, CLL, mantle cell lymphoma, and ALL are the main targets. The goal is to conduct studies that will allow them to submit an IND to the FDA at the end of the award, and the funds requested are $4.1 million. This applicant also is providing co-funding, although it isn't necessary for this applicant to do so. They are providing co-funding at $858,722. A little background on B-cell malignancies, which include leukemias and lymphomas that in this particular instance, they're looking to those that have a poor prognosis or that have significant impact on the quality of life and where other therapies may have failed. There are a lack of tolerable and durable therapies for patients, particularly for recurring or refractory disease, and that represents an unmet need. So the proposed therapy here utilizes a target. This is ROR1, which is a receptor tyrosine kinase found on cells, and it is highly expressed within B-cell malignancies, as well as solid tumors such as breast, lung, and colon. And so it offers the possibility of a cure for patients with these malignancies and a possible expansion to solid tumors in the future. And the therapeutic is a stem cell project because the candidate acts on cancer stem cells. There are a couple of similar projects in our portfolio, in our clinical portfolio. We have a phase 1b/2a clinical trial, also targeting B-cell malignancies. This is a biologic, a monoclonal antibody that targets the same receptor tyrosine kinase that is combined with another inhibitor for the Bruton tyrosine kinase inhibitor. And so that is the same broader team that is looking at ROR1 in a different format. We have another phase 1 trial which targets B-cell malignancies. That one is a CAR T-cell therapy that targets a combination of CD19 and CD22 antigens, which are obviously different from the ROR1 target in this current proposal. The applicants have had previous CERN funding. They had a translational award, which is now closed. That was the prelude to this particular proposal, targeting hematologic malignancies. And the goal was to conduct a pre-IND meeting, which was done, and was the project was successful in doing so, and it allowed them to prepare the application that is before us today. The overall summary of the GWG recommendation is that it scored a 1, meaning exceptional merit and warrants funding. There were 9 scientific members that gave it a score of 1. There were 5 members that gave it a score of 2. There were no members that gave it a score of 3. The DEI score from our board members on the GWG was a 9.5. And the CERM team recommendation concurs with that of the GWG recommendation to fund this project for the award amount of 4.1 million. And so back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Sembrano. Do we have a motion to approve this grant?
I move it. Yeah.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is that Isabel?
Yes, sorry.
Yes. Thank you. Discussion by members of the board. Hearing none. Any comments from members of the public?
There are no hands raised.
Thank you, Maria. Maria, will you then please call the roll?
Dan Bernal, Anne Marie Dulage,
Yes.
Isabel Dudon,
Yes.
Mark Fisher Colbury,
Yes.
Fred Fisher,
Yes.
Elena Flowers,
Yes.
Leander Clark Harvey, David Higgins,
Yes.
Steve Julesgard,
Yes.
Rich Lahara,
Yes.
Dave Martin,
Yes.
Christine Miskowski,
Yes.
Lauren Miller Rogan, Adriana Padilla,
Yes.
Joe Panetta,
Yes.
Al Roulette,
Yes.
Jonathan Thomas,
Yes.
Carol Watson. The motion carries.
Thank you, Maria. That concludes the action items from today's agenda. We are now into the general public comment on any topic of interest. Do we have any public comment at this time? Any hands, Maria?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. That concludes today's agenda. We have a busy stretch coming up in the next month with a number of subcommittee meetings and the board meeting on, Maria?
December 14th.
December 14th. So
That'll be an all-day meeting. So there's a lot on the agenda and that'll get posted on December 4th.
Thank you. Everybody, a very happy Thanksgiving to you and your families. And we look forward to all of the work that we will be doing in the next month, culminating in the board meeting, at which time, at the board meeting, among other things, we will be entertaining final adoption of the new strategic plan, and we'll be off to the races on new elements contemplated in that. So thank you, everybody, very much for all of your hard work. Thank you, Maria, for guiding this as always, keeping us going on the straight and narrow. And thank you to to Tricia and Doug and everybody else who helps make this possible. Have a wonderful holiday, and we will see you shortly thereafter. Thanks very much.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.